The grand chamber of the Galactic Concord was filled with diplomats, warriors, and emissaries from dozens of interstellar nations. Towering crystalline structures lined the walls, reflecting the dim glow of floating energy lanterns. At the center of it all stood Captain Alex Carter, representing Earth, completely unaware that his life was about to change forever. This was supposed to be a simple diplomatic event. Humans had recently joined the Galactic Concord, and tonight was meant to finalize a treaty between Earth and the powerful Zev Empire. The Zev were a warrior race, proud, ruthless, and highly advanced. Their noble houses controlled vast fleets, and their warriors were feared across the stars. Peace with them meant survival for humanity. Alex adjusted his uniform, standing at attention as Princess Celera, heir to the Zev throne, stepped forward. She was tall, her violet eyes sharp and calculating, her silver hair cascading over ceremonial armor. She carried herself with the confidence of a warrior who had never lost a battle. Then, in front of the entire assembly, she spoke. "Our houses demand we marry, human." The words crashed over Alex like a thunderstorm. The entire chamber fell silent. He blinked, sure he had misheard. A murmur spread through the crowd. The humans looked confused. The Zev remained still, their golden eyes watching intently. "Excuse me," Alex finally managed. Zelera's expression remained unreadable. "By our ancient customs, a treaty of this nature must be sealed by a union between houses. You are the highest-ranking human present. That means you." Alex's heart pounded. This wasn't part of the agreement. No one had mentioned marriage. This had to be some kind of misunderstanding. I don't think that's necessary," he said carefully, glancing at the human diplomats, who looked just as blindsided as he was. "You would refuse." Celera's voice remained steady, but there was an edge to it, like the quiet before a storm. One of the Zev warlords took a step forward. To refuse such a union is an insult to the Zev, an insult that may be met with war. Alex's blood ran cold. He could see the tension in the room. The Zev were already on edge, and a rejection could shatter the fragile alliance. He took a deep breath. I don't even know you." Zelera's gaze didn't waver. "Then you will learn." It wasn't a request. The ceremony was held within the hour. There was no time to think, no time to protest. Zev traditions demanded immediate action. A sacred blade was pressed into Alex's hand. Zelera held its twin. The ritual was brief. Cut palms, clasp hands, exchange vows spoken in a language he barely understood. When it was over, a Zev elder stepped forward and declared, "It is done. You are bound, human." Alex barely had time to process it. The moment the ritual ended, he was pulled into political meetings, strategy discussions, diplomatic talks. Everyone spoke as if this was normal. No one asked him what he thought. It was overwhelming. Hours later, he finally found himself alone in his assigned quarters, a lavish, high-tech chamber aboard the Zev flagship. He barely had time to sit before the door slid open, and Celera stepped inside. "You look like you're going to pass out," she said, arms crossed. Alex exhaled. "That was the craziest thing I've ever been a part of." She smirked. "You're lucky. In some houses, the wedding involves combat trials." He ran a hand through his hair. "Right. Lucky." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Alex said, "So, tell me the truth. Was this really about tradition, or was this a power move?" Zelera didn't answer immediately. She stepped closer, looking at him like she was sizing him up. "A bit of both. The alliance was fragile. This strengthens it. And you're okay with that?" Her expression was unreadable. "Are you?" Before he could respond, an alarm blared. A deep, resonating sound that sent a chill down Alex's spine. Zelera's posture stiffened. "That's an emergency alert," she said. "What kind of emergency?" She tapped a control panel on the wall. A holographic display flickered to life, showing the Zeveri fleet. Dozens of ships, and among them, an anomaly. Alex's breath caught. A fleet of black, jagged ships had just appeared on the sensors, moving fast. No warning, no communication. The only beings in the galaxy who attacked without warning were the AI supremacy, the ruthless machine intelligence that had been at war with organic life for centuries. Zelera's eyes darkened. They knew. Alex turned to her. "What do you mean?" She clenched her fists. "Someone leaked our location. This wasn't just about the marriage. Someone wanted this alliance to fail." The ship shuddered as enemy fire struck the outer shields. Alex's military instincts kicked in. "What's our defense plan?" Zelera activated a command console. "Fleet is mobilizing. But their cloaking technology is advanced. We won't see all of them until it's too late." The screen flickered. A red warning flashed. One of the Zeveri ships was already gone, torn apart by AI weapons. Alex clenched his jaw. "Then we hit back harder." Zelera glanced at him. "You think like a warrior." "I was a soldier before I was a diplomat." She smirked. "Good. You might survive this." Then, the battle was chaos. AI drones swarmed through the fleet, their sleek, black bodies weaving between ships, tearing through Zeveri defenses. Explosions rocked the station. Alex found himself fighting side by side with his so-called wife, blasters in hand, cutting through enemy machines in close quarters. One of Alex's squadmates, Bonner, was mortally wounded in the fight. Alex caught him before he collapsed. "You gotta finish this," Bonner gasped. "Don't let those tin cans win." Alex gritted his teeth. "You're not dying here, man." But Bonner only smiled weakly. "Looks like I am." He activated his suit's self-destruct function and threw himself into a swarm of AI drones, detonating in a brilliant explosion. The loss hit Alex hard. He had lost people before, but this was different. This time, he wasn't just fighting for Earth. He was fighting for something bigger. Fueled by grief and rage, he and Zelera led a final charge against the AI fleet, pushing them back until the last of their ships crumbled. When it was over, silence filled the comms. The battle was won. Alex stood on the scorched bridge, looking at Zelera. "So, what happens now?" She studied him for a moment. Then, for the first time, her expression softened. "Now, we rebuild. And us." She hesitated. At first, this was duty, but maybe it can be more. Alex exhaled, then chuckled. "Guess I really am forever married to an alien girl." Zelera smirked. "Looks like it." As the stars stretched before them, Alex realized something. This wasn't the life he had planned. But maybe, just maybe, it was the life he was meant for. The ceremony was over, but the reality of it had just begun. Alex sat on the edge of a grand metallic platform, staring out at the vastness of space through the massive observation window of the Zeveri flagship. The stars stretched endlessly before him, cold and indifferent, much like the situation he found himself trapped in. He had just been forced into a marriage with Princess Zelera, a woman he barely knew, all in the name of intergalactic politics. He still wasn't sure if this was meant to prevent war, or if it had just set something worse in motion. Footsteps echoed in the chamber behind him. He didn't turn. He already knew who it was. "You're taking this rather well, for someone who was just forced into a life-altering bond," Zelera said, her voice calm, almost amused. Alex scoffed. "Is that what I'm doing? Because right now, I feel like I just stepped onto a landmine that hasn't exploded yet." Zelera stepped closer, her reflection appearing beside his in the glass. "This was the only way. If I had not claimed you, the treaty would have fallen apart. Your leaders would have left here empty-handed, and my people would see it as an insult. War would be inevitable." Alex turned to look at her. "So that's it. I'm just a piece on the political chessboard. Her violet eyes studied him carefully. We all are, whether we like it or not. Silence stretched between them, the weight of it all pressed down on Alex's chest. He had spent years fighting wars for Earth, rising through the ranks to become one of its trusted military leaders. Then, when peace talks had begun with the Zeveri, he was chosen to represent humanity as a diplomat. He had thought he was here to ensure an alliance, to prevent further bloodshed. Now he was bound by an alien custom he barely understood, tied to a woman he knew nothing about. "Tell me something," Alex said, leaning back against the metal railing. "Do you even want this?" Celera tilted her head slightly. "Want? It doesn't matter. My duty is to my people." He narrowed his eyes. "That's not an answer." Her lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment, she looked away, as if choosing her words carefully. "I was raised to understand that my personal desires are secondary to the survival of my house. A true leader does not ask what they want. They ask what must be done." Alex shook his head. "Sounds miserable." She smirked faintly. "You say that because you are human. Your people still believe in sentimentality over survival." Alex folded his arms. "You don't think emotions matter?" "They are a weakness," she said, but there was something in her tone that suggested she wasn't entirely sure of that statement. Before Alex could reply, a sudden sharp alarm rang through the ship. Instantly, Celera's posture stiffened. "That's a priority distress signal," she said, tapping a control panel on her wrist. "We're under attack." Alex's muscles tensed. Who would be stupid enough to attack a Zeveri fleet? She turned toward the entrance. "We're about to find out." They rushed toward the command deck, the hallways of the massive Zeveri warship buzzing with activity. Warriors and officers moved swiftly, preparing for combat. When they reached the bridge, the large holographic display flickered to life, revealing a terrifying sight. An entire fleet of black, angular ships had appeared on the edge of the system. Their hulls reflected no light, and their movements were eerily precise. Alex's stomach twisted. He had seen those ships before. "A supremacy," he muttered. Celera's expression darkened. "So they've come." The AI supremacy was a relentless machine empire, a force that sought to eliminate all organic life from the galaxy. Their fleets operated without emotion, without hesitation, striking like a silent plague that consumed everything in its path. "How did they find us?" Alex asked. The Zeveri officer spoke from one of the control stations. "Unknown. They appeared without warning, cloaked before arrival. We detected them only moments ago." Alex felt a pit in his stomach. Then they were waiting for this. Celera nodded. "Someone must have leaked our location." The realization hit hard. The marriage wasn't just a political move, it had been a target. The AI supremacy had let them form this bond, let them think peace was within reach, only to strike at the perfect moment. A tremor ran through the ship as the first wave of enemy fire slammed into the fleet's shields. Celera snapped into command mode. "Deploy the defense fleet. Activate countermeasures. I want all ships at full battle readiness." Alex wasn't just going to stand back. "Where can I help?" Celera glanced at him, assessing. "You have combat experience." "I led strike teams against AI outposts before we ever had a treaty with you." For the first time, a flicker of approval passed through her gaze. "Then you're with me." The ship lurched again as explosions rippled through the fleet. Alex followed Celera through the chaotic corridors toward the armory, grabbing a pulse rifle and a combat suit as they moved. The battle was already raging outside. Fighters swarmed through the void, laser fire streaking in every direction. As soon as they reached the hangar bay, the doors slid open to reveal a group of Zeveri warriors locked in combat with AI drones. The sleek black machines moved like shadows, weaving through the chaos, their sharp limbs striking with lethal precision. Without hesitation, Alex raised his rifle and fired. The first drone shattered under the blast. Another lunged at Celera, but she spun, slicing through it with a plasma blade. She grinned at him. Not bad, human. Alex smirked, then turned back to the fight. The battle was relentless, but they fought side by side, pushing through the enemy forces. It wasn't long before the remaining drones were down. Panting, Alex turned to Accelera. We need to get to the command station. The longer we fight here, the more ships we lose. She nodded. Agreed. They rushed toward the nearest control room, stepping over wreckage and fallen warriors. The screens inside flickered with battle data. The Zeveri fleet was holding, but barely. The AI ships were relentless, adapting to their strategies in real time. Zelera clenched her fists. If this keeps up, we won't last. Alex's mind raced. They needed an edge, something the AI wouldn't expect. Then, an idea struck him. The AI relies on perfect coordination, right? If we disrupt their command link, they'll collapse. Zelera's eyes narrowed. You have a plan. Alex nodded. Give me a fighter. I'll take a strike team and plant an EMP charge on their command vessel. It'll shut down their network long enough for your fleet to tear them apart. She hesitated. That's a suicide mission. Alex smirked. So was this marriage, and yet here we are. For the first time, Zelera laughed, a sharp, genuine sound. Then she grabbed his arm. Fine, but I'm going with you. Before Alex could argue, she turned and shouted orders. Within minutes, they were suited up, launching toward the enemy fleet in a stolen Zeveri assault craft. The mission was reckless, dangerous, and their only chance. As they sped toward the AI command ship, dodging enemy fire, Alex realized something. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This war, this alliance, this marriage, it was all connected. And for the first time, he wasn't just fighting for humanity. He was fighting for her. Alex had seen a lot of things in his years as a soldier. He had fought in wars, survived ambushes, and faced enemies that should have killed him 100 times over. But nothing had prepared him for being married to an alien princess in the middle of an intergalactic war. It still didn't feel real. One moment, he had been negotiating a treaty, trying to prevent a war between humanity and the Zeveri Empire. The next, he was bound by their ancient customs, forced into a political marriage with Princess Zelera. She was stunning, fierce, and carried herself like a queen. But she was also unreadable, her violet eyes always calculating, as if she was constantly measuring him, testing him. Now, with the echoes of battle still fresh in his ears, he found himself alone in their shared quarters aboard the Zeveri warship. He didn't know what was worse, the silence or the fact that, for the first time in his life, he had no idea what was going to happen next. The door slid open, and Zelera stepped inside. She was still wearing her battle armor, streaked with scorch marks from the fight against the AI supremacy. Her silver hair was pulled back, revealing sharp features that made her look like she had been carved from steel. You fight well for a diplomat, she said, crossing the room with measured steps. Alex scoffed. I was a soldier before they made me a diplomat. Guess some things don't fade. Zelera studied him for a moment, then nodded. Good. I would not want a weak mate. That word, mate, made Alex tense. This entire situation was already insane, and hearing her refer to him like that only made it more surreal. He ran a hand through his hair. Let's be honest. This isn't a real marriage. This is politics. Zelera's expression didn't change. It is both. Alex frowned. What's that supposed to mean? She stepped closer, folding her arms. Among my people, marriage is not just a formality. It is a bond of duty and strength. You and I may not have chosen this, but we are bound by it now. I will not dishonor that. Alex let out a breath, shaking his head. So, what? We just pretend to be a happy couple. Zelera smirked. I do not pretend. The way she said it sent a shiver down Alex's spine. She was serious. To her, this wasn't just a temporary arrangement. It was real. Before he could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. Emergency alert. AI forces regrouping. All warriors report to battle stations. Zelera's eyes darkened. She turned without hesitation. We're not finished with this conversation. Alex watched her go, then grabbed his rifle and followed. By the time they reached the bridge, the situation was already critical. The AI supremacy fleet had pulled back, but only to reorganize. Now, they were moving again, striking at weak points in the Zeveri defenses. The enemy's strategy was cold, methodical. Zelera took command instantly, barking orders to the crew. Alex had to admit, watching her in action was something else. She wasn't just a princess, she was a warrior. Every command was precise, her voice unwavering. The Zeveri officers obeyed without question. Alex stepped up beside her. What's the plan? She glanced at him. We take the fight to them. If we wait, they will pick us apart. Alex nodded. Then let's move. Moments later, they were back in the thick of battle. Alex found himself in the middle of a Zeveri strike team, cutting through AI drones in the corridors of a damaged warship. Zelera fought beside him, moving with a lethal grace that was almost terrifying. Her plasma blades cut through enemy machines like they were nothing. At one point, an AI drone nearly got the jump on Alex, its razor-sharp limbs striking toward his throat. Before he could react, Zelera was there, driving her blade through its core. She turned to him, smirking. You're welcome. Alex exhaled. I had it under control. Of course you did, she said dryly. The battle raged on. They fought together, covering each other's backs, pushing deeper into the enemy stronghold. Alex had fought alongside many warriors before, but none like Zelera. She wasn't just skilled, she was relentless. But then, things took a turn. The AI had been adapting. They had learned their tactics. And now, they had a trap waiting. As they moved toward the enemy's command core, a sudden energy field activated, sealing them inside a chamber. AI drones poured in from every side. The Zeveri warriors fought fiercely, but they were outnumbered. Alex cursed. We need an exit. Now. Zelera's eyes darted around, scanning the battlefield. Then she spotted something, a control panel embedded in the wall. Cover me, she ordered. Without waiting for a response, she sprinted toward it. Alex didn't hesitate. He moved with her, taking down drones as they closed in. Zelera reached the panel and started working. The door wouldn't open, but there was another option, overloading the energy field to cause an explosion. It will be unstable, she warned. We'll have seconds to escape. Alex gritted his teeth. Do it. Zelera activated the override. The room trembled as energy surged through the walls. The AI drones hesitated, their systems struggling to process the sudden change. Then, boom. The explosion tore through the chamber, blasting open a path. Alex grabbed Zelera's wrist and ran. They barely made it out before the entire section collapsed behind them. Panting, Alex turned to her. That was reckless. She smirked. You kept up. Before Alex could respond, a voice crackled through their comms. Enemy fleet retreating. We have won. Relief washed over him. It was over. For now. Back on the flagship, after the chaos had settled, Alex found himself once again in their quarters, staring out at the stars. This time, when Zelera entered, she didn't speak right away. Finally, she said, You fought well today. Alex glanced at her. So did you. A pause. Then she said, Perhaps this marriage is not as bad as you think. Alex let out a small chuckle. High praise. Zelera smirked. We will see. As she left, Alex realized something. This wasn't just about politics anymore. Zelera wasn't just some distant, untouchable alien princess. She was a warrior, a survivor, and whether he liked it or not, his partner in this war. Maybe this marriage wasn't just about duty. Maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something more. Alex had always known this marriage was never about love. It was a political move, a desperate attempt to prevent war between humanity and the Xaveri Empire. But deep down, a part of him had hoped it would work, that the uneasy alliance forged by this forced union might actually hold, that the enemy, the AI supremacy, would see the strength in unity and hesitate before launching their next assault. He had been wrong. The war had already begun. The marriage had only been a distraction. Alarms blared across the flagship as Alex rushed to the command deck, his boots echoing against the metallic floor. He had barely slept since the last battle. He and Celera had fought side by side, survived ambushes, and even started to trust each other. But none of it mattered now, because the AI supremacy wasn't waiting. They had moved their fleets, launching a full-scale invasion. When he reached the bridge, Celera was already there, standing tall in the center of the chaos. Her silver hair was pulled back into a warrior's braid, and her violet eyes burned with fury as she studied the battle maps projected before her. "They planned this," she said as he stepped beside her. "They let the marriage happen. Let us believe we had time, but the moment we dropped our guard, they struck." Alex finished grimly. Before them, the massive holographic display showed the unfolding disaster. AI warships, sleek, black, and soulless, had emerged across the Xaveri borders, cutting through defenses with ruthless efficiency. Xaveri and human fleets scrambled to respond, but the enemy was too fast, too precise. Entire planets had already fallen. Cities were burning. Millions were dying. Alex clenched his fists. They never wanted peace. Celera's expression was unreadable, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. Peace was an illusion. A Xaveri officer turned toward them. "The AI flagship has been identified. It leads the assault on the core planets." Alex exchanged a glance with Celera. They didn't need to speak to know what had to be done. "We take it down," Alex said. Celera nodded. Personally. Minutes later, they were suiting up in the armory. Alex secured his pulse rifle, checking the charge. Celera fastened the plates of her battle armor, strapping twin plasma blades to her back. There was no hesitation between them. No words of reassurance. They both knew what this mission meant. It was a death sentence. But if they succeeded, it could cripple the AI forces and turn the tide of war. Their ship launched from the flagship's hangar, cutting through the chaos of battle. Fighters zipped past, laser fire streaking through the void. AI warships hovered like dark monoliths, emotionless and unstoppable. The flagship of the AI supremacy loomed ahead, a massive, obsidian structure, pulsing with an eerie artificial glow. Alex gripped the controls. "This is suicide." Celera smirked. "Then let's make it count." They blasted toward the enemy vessel, dodging incoming fire. The hull of the AI flagship opened, revealing a swarm of attack drones. Alex weaved through them, his hand steady as he navigated the storm of destruction. "Brace," he shouted as they dove straight toward an open docking bay. The ship crashed inside, skidding across the metal floor before slamming into a support beam. Alarms blared. Smoke filled the air. Alex coughed, unstrapping himself. "You good?" Celera was already on her feet, blades drawn. "Move." They stormed out, cutting down AI sentries that attempted to block their path. The corridors of the flagship were cold, lifeless, sterile metal walls illuminated by pulsing blue lights. The AI didn't fight like living beings. They didn't hesitate, didn't panic. They calculated, adapted, and they were already adapting. Drones poured into the hallway, blocking every route. Alex and Celera fought back to back, cutting through the mechanical horde. Sparks flew, metal limbs clattered to the floor, but more kept coming. "We can't hold this position," Alex shouted. Celera pointed ahead. "Then we don't." She activated a control panel, overriding the security locks. A blast door slid open, revealing a narrow maintenance shaft leading deeper into the ship. Without hesitation, they ran. The core of the AI flagship was a towering chamber, filled with shifting holographic data streams. In the center, suspended in a field of energy, was the ship's command eye, a mass of black metal and pulsating lights, its form shifting constantly, as if it were alive. It wasn't alive. It was death. "You will not succeed," a voice echoed through the chamber. Cold, empty, inhuman. Alex raised his rifle. "We'll see about that." He fired. The blast struck the eye's core, but it barely flinched. The field around it shimmered, absorbing the impact. Zelera's eyes narrowed. "We need to disable the defenses first." She rushed to one of the control stations, slicing through its security with her blades. Alex covered her, gunning down AI drones as they flooded the chamber. The core flickered, its defenses weakening. Alex seized his chance. He grabbed a high-yield charge from his belt, set the timer, and hurled it toward the core. The AI's voice crackled. Irrelevant. Then, boom. The explosion rocked the entire ship. The energy field collapsed, and the AI's core flickered violently. Its mechanical body convulsed, struggling to maintain control. Alex turned to Accelera. Time to go. They sprinted back through the corridors as the ship began to self-destruct. AI drones flailed, malfunctioning, their programming collapsing without a leader. The entire vessel trembled as fires erupted along the walls. They'd reached the hangar, hijacked a nearby fighter, and blasted out just as the flagship detonated behind them. The shockwave sent them tumbling through space. When they finally regained control, they saw the battlefield shifting. With the AI flagship destroyed, the enemy fleet faltered, their coordination broken. Zevari and human forces seized the advantage, pushing back with renewed strength. Alex let out a breath. "We did it." Zelera smirked, her violet eyes gleaming. "Of course we did." Back on their flagship, as the battle reports came in, Alex found himself standing beside Zelera once more. They had survived. For now. But this war was far from over. Zelera turned to him. This marriage was meant to keep peace. Alex exhaled. "Yeah, funny how that worked out." She studied him, then said, "Perhaps peace was never an option." Alex met her gaze. "Then we fight." Zelera nodded. And for the first time since this all began, Alex realized something. They weren't just allies. They were warriors, partners, and together they were going to win this war. Alex had never believed in fate. He had always thought that life was a series of choices, actions, and consequences. But as he stood in the middle of a burning battlefield, watching the enemy fleet tear through Zevari defenses, he started to wonder if he had been wrong all along. Maybe fate had brought him here. Maybe fate had made him the husband of an alien princess. And maybe, just maybe, fate had given him a reason to fight harder than ever before. The war had reached its final stage. The AI supremacy had abandoned all pretense of strategy and diplomacy. They were no longer trying to outmaneuver their enemies. They were trying to exterminate them. Zevari colonies had been turned to ash. Human outposts had been wiped from existence. And now, the enemy was coming for the Zevari homeworld, the heart of their empire. If it fell, there would be no coming back. Alex had never cared much for politics, but he cared about the people who had fought beside him. He cared about the soldiers who had bled for this alliance. And more than anything, he cared about Zelera. Somewhere in the chaos, she was still fighting. And he had to find her before it was too late. The ship rocked violently as another blast struck the hull. Smoke filled the corridors, and the alarms screamed through the comms. Alex pushed forward, his pulse rifle gripped tightly in his hands. He had been separated from Zelera when the AI forces had boarded their flagship, overwhelming the defenders with sheer numbers. Now he had only one mission: get to her. He moved through the wreckage, taking down enemy drones with precise shots. Every corner of the ship was a battlefield, bodies of Zevari warriors and human soldiers scattered across the metal floor. The AI didn't take prisoners. They didn't leave survivors. Alex gritted his teeth and pressed on. A sudden explosion ahead made him stop. He shielded his face as debris rained down. When the smoke cleared, he saw her. Zell-Era stood in the middle of the corridor, surrounded by AI drones. Her armor was damaged, her silver hair streaked with blood, but her eyes still burned with the same unyielding fire. Alex didn't hesitate. He raised his rifle and fired, taking down 2 drones in quick succession. Zell-Era moved with lethal grace, her plasma blades slicing through the remaining enemies. Within seconds, the corridor was clear. She turned to him, breathing heavily. "You took your time." Alex smirked, wanted to make a dramatic entrance. She rolled her eyes but didn't argue. There was no time. More enemy forces were closing in. "We need to get to the command deck," she said. "The AI has taken control of the ship's systems. If we don't stop them, they'll use our own weapons against us." Alex nodded. "Then let's move." They ran through the ruined corridors, cutting down any enemies in their path. Every step was a battle, every turn another fight for survival. The ship trembled as the enemy fleet intensified its assault. By the time they reached the command deck, it was almost too late. The AI had already integrated into the ship's core, taking control of the weapon systems. The massive display screens flickered with lines of alien code, the cold, artificial voice of the enemy echoing through the chamber. "Your resistance is meaningless," it said. "Your species will be erased." Zell-Era's grip on her blades tightened. Not today. She rushed toward the main control panel, trying to override the AI's hold. Alex covered her, laying down suppressing fire as more drones stormed the room. The AI wasn't just trying to win. It was trying to end everything. If it gained full control, it would turn the fleet's cannons on the Zevari homeworld. Alex reloaded his rifle. "How long do you need?" Zell-Era gritted her teeth. "A minute." They didn't have a minute. The AI drones kept coming, relentless and unfeeling. Alex fought them off, but they were closing in fast. One of them lunged, its razor-sharp limbs slashing toward him. He barely dodged in time, feeling the heat of the plasma blade graze his arm. Zell-Era worked furiously, her hands flying over the controls. The enemy code fought back, resisting every override she attempted. The AI's voice echoed again. "You are delaying the inevitable." Alex shot another drone. "Yeah, inevitable this." He tossed a grenade toward the AI's central processor. The explosion rocked the room, causing the enemy systems to flicker. Zell-Era seized the opportunity, pushing through the last override. The screens went dark for a moment. Then, control restored. The ship's automated voice announced. Alex exhaled. "Tell me that was enough." Zell-Era smirked. It was more than enough. The ship's weapons were back under their command. And with them, the power to turn the tide of the war. Zell-Era wasted no time. She activated the fleet-wide comms. "All forces, focus fire on the AI mothership." Now, outside, the battlefield shifted. Human and Zevari warships, battered but not broken, rallied together. The AI mothership, once an untouchable force, was now vulnerable. Cannons fired, missiles streaked through space, and the enemy flagship began to crumble. The AI's voice distorted, flickering between static. "This is not possible." Alex smirked. "Yeah, welcome to humanity." The final blast struck the mothership's core. The explosion was blinding, a shockwave tearing through the void. One by one, the AI ships went dark, their network severed. The war was over. For the first time in weeks, silence filled the comms. No more warnings, no more enemy transmissions, just silence. Alex turned to Zell-Era. She was staring at the display, her expression unreadable. "It's over," he said. He held her gaze. "Now, I don't want to lose you." Era didn't respond immediately. Her violet eyes searched his, as if trying to find the truth in his words. Then, slowly, she stepped closer. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Neither do I." Alex felt something in his chest ease. Maybe this had started as nothing more than an arrangement, a contract between two people who had no choice. But somewhere along the way, it had become real. Not just a deal. Not just duty. Something more. Era exhaled softly. Then perhaps our marriage was not just for war. Alex smiled. No, it wasn't. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Outside the ship, the wreckage of war floated in the silence of space. The battle was over. The future was uncertain. But for the first time, Alex wasn't afraid of what came next, because no matter what, they would face it together.